Hey everyone, I'm Terry Riyasat, a creative specialist for the Foundry, and today we're going to take a quick look at an amazing feature, the vector blur node. First off, just want to thank Grant Miller from Ingenuity Engine for giving us access to the Power Rangers short fan film for us to use in this video. So when we render motion blur straight from the renderer, it may be too much of a commitment. It requires high sampling, which means that render time is going to go way up. The issue with that could lead to re-rendering. Like if the motion blur looked okay for a few test renders, but then it turns out the blur was too high or the samples were too low and it looks grainy, then it means it's time to re-render all of the passes. So this is where the vector blur comes in. The node's been completely redone and it has a new algorithm that takes advantage of the entire GPU. And now the CPU use is also much faster. Let's look at a shot from the Power Rangers short film from Ingenuity Engine. I'm only going to do an A over B comp with an early render. If you want to see the final shot, be sure to check it out on the web. So when you're preparing for post-render motion blur, you need a velocity or motion vector pass. Different renders have different names for this. This is a multi-channel EXR, and we can see the V-Ray velocity channels in here. This is an unclamped V-Ray velocity pass. So let's feed this into the vector blur node. So you'll notice a few things. First off, we have the option for GPU acceleration, and that's going to give us some serious speed increase. Next up is the UV channels. We want to find our motion vectors from that EXR. Next is the motion vector presets. So right off the bat, we have all kinds of presets to choose from. So if you rendered with Pixar RenderMan, V-Ray, Arnold, Moto, Mental Ray, or even at a Nuke, you can do that right here. So the difference with this is each preset has different values for attributes that are very specific to the render. We know that this motion vector pass is from V-Ray and it's unclamped, so let's go ahead and choose that. Next, we have the options to output the results or the UV map used to generate the motion vectors. So this is going to help us visualize the UV offset from the render that it came from. We use the V-Ray preset here, so we know it has a value already set for us at minus 0.5, and I'm going to leave it at that. We have options to blur the motion vectors before using them with different types of filters. We can offset the vectors also with a constant value, and we can of course assign an alpha channel to them. Now in the motion blur section, this is where we can control our result. We can change the profile of the blur we output. We have the new algorithm, which is amazing, so we want to use that, and this gives us the cleaner result. But you can still switch back to the previous one if you want to. The motion amount is going to be how much we blur. So we want to take a look at our plate, determine how much we need. We can key this attribute if we need to. In heavy areas, we can increase this and then go ahead and bring it down to help us match the plate. The motion fall off will control how quickly the Gaussian fall off happens on the blur. 0 will be a very sharp fall off. I'm going to leave this at the default of 0.33. We can adjust the opening of the shutter by an offset in a plus or minus value, and we have an option to expand our blur bounding box. Now let's keep an eye on this section. We have more control over adding smoother transitions. If we have a render where the objects are overlapping, we can produce much cleaner results by using this. If we use the normalize button, and you can see in this section here they're crossing over, this is going to help us smooth out that result. So because our render is overlapping, I definitely want to have that normalize on. Now let's take a look and maybe fine-tune a better motion amount here and the amount of blur that we want to put on here. And this section of the frame it's quite high. If you look at the plate here, it's very blurry, so we're going to set one over here and then we can pull back. If it becomes too much overall, I can always key it down later on and make some adjustments. So let's cache this through and see a quick result here. Okay, great. So that was a quick look at the overhauled vector blur node. It's such a time-saving tool and it'll be a huge part of any production.